Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Pullbuoy podcast as we kick off our 14th season. Steve here. Bob is also on board for this first episode of 2023 as we have a discussion about distance swimming. But before I introduce our guest, a quick request. If you enjoy listening, please do leave a review on Spotify or Apple. We'd really appreciate it, and it does really help spread the word. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. Okay, anyone who's listened to the Pullbuoy podcast over the last year or two will have heard my good friend Bob Ballard talking about distance swimming and his frustration perhaps that Britain is not punching its weight in those events at the moment. Now, someone who knows all about that part of the sport is Kevin Renshaw. He's the distance lead for British swimming. He's with us on this podcast with Bob and I. Kevin, welcome to the podcast. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for asking me along. It's a pleasure.
All right then. So as I say, you're the distance lead for British swimming at the moment. What does that role entail?
Well, it's a new role within British swimming. Since February, I was appointed into this alongside my other part of the job. I'm also the Olympic swimming performance pathway lead as well. But this was added on in February because of the fact, the undeniable fact that we've kind of ran away. It's all kind of ran away from us in terms of the distance events. So my remit is, we did have a marathon lead before. My remit is different. Mine is not just marathon open water. So there's a bit on my job title that is brackets 400 and up over. So I'm trying to reinvigorate distance swimming, every event from 400 up over, pool and open water. And in fact, I actually just see open water as another distance event, and that's the approach that we are going to be taking going forward. It's another distance event. That's what the rest of the world are doing. That is what I was doing many years ago as well, and what Sean Kelly was doing. Somewhere along the line, it's kind of got a little bit lost, but that's the approach that we're coming at this at. There are 4 distance events: the 400, the 800, the 1500, and open water.
And presumably, the importance of those events has gone up now. There are more Olympic medals with the men's 8 and the women's 15 coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And with more events, there's more opportunities, and that's the message really that I've spent the last 11 months given to swimmers and coaches, is that there are huge opportunities for them and us in distance swimming. I think in Tokyo we took 3 male swimmers and 1 female swimmer for the 400 up events. In theory, there are 8 and 8, so we took 4. Theoretically, if you get somebody different in every event, there are 16 people that can go if you meet the performance standards. So the amount of opportunity in these events for us is huge.
Does that make you almost a salesman, if you like, when you're travelling around or you're speaking to coaches, trying to push the benefits of distance swimming over maybe other routes?
Absolutely, and I actually talk about that a lot, about the need to be a salesman as a coach. You do have to, for me, I've had a recent Twitter exchange with someone on this, but I believe that you do need to sometimes sell a journey. It's not a hard sell, bang, bang, bang. It's selling some inspiration, selling a journey, selling what's possible, and like I say, selling these opportunities to people. So absolutely, it's a little bit of salesmanship in there as well, yeah.
Why do we take our eye off the ball? When you look at the legacy we've had for the last 20 years with David, who you worked with Jazz, with Becky, with Cassie, with Kerry, and you look at these world-class athletes we've had, all getting Olympic medals, and then suddenly it just drops off a cliff. Why has that happened?
Well, because I knew you would ask me that, and it's a really important bit to it. I mapped this out for you guys. So in 20 years, at world and Olympic level. We have had medals from Graham Smith with coach Dave Callear, Dave Davies with coach Dave Haller, then me in the open water, Kerry-Ann Payne and Cassie Patton with coach Sean Kelly, Rebecca Cook with coach Steve Hill, Jazz Carlin, developed by Bud McAllister, then Dave McNulty, Becky Adlington with Bill Furness, Joe Jackson with Dave McNulty, and then myself, Timmy Shuttleworth with myself and Dave Hemmings. Only Dave McNulty still coaches out of all of those experienced coaches with track record of having done it in these events. And most of these people the coaches I named there didn't just do it the once. So Bill obviously got Becky to go back in and repeat in 2012. Dave McNulty did it with Jackson, and then McNulty, myself with Dave, then Jackson, and then Timmy Shuttleworth in open water in the 5K. Sean Kelly also did it with Graham Smith as well in 2001 at World Championship level. So there's a huge void in experience in the coaching fraternity now. Dave McNulty being the one and only in that list who is still actively coaching on deck.
Coming back to a coaching perspective, is it because it's the amount of hours required to do it? You can do a sprinter much more quickly, the sets are smaller and shorter. Is it that the coaches just don't have the time to do it?
I think since the pandemic, there's certainly a bit of that around. Lots of clubs lost water time or lost water space or been charged more for it. We're well aware of the challenges that clubs have got. But I think there's also, I think there's a worldwide thing of, there's probably a few things that are worldwide that contribute towards it. One, the ISL was fantastic. But that was a earning potential for swimmers, but only 200 metre and below events. So this group of swimmers up here were not possibly not deliberately, but were frozen out from that and from the earning potential. They also have probably a worldwide culture of wanting to get more for less, or certainly wanting to get the same result for less. So people are trying to find quicker and easier ways. I don't think there's an easier way anywhere. I mean, I think the sprinters work incredibly hard, but in different kind of ways to distance swim. So there aren't any real easier ways, and I guess sometimes that's why. And we'll touch on this later. Some of the records have been around for a long time in the longer events, because if you're looking for an easier way, physiological fact is physiological fact, and easier ways don't quite cut it.
Now, if I was looking at it from a swimmer's perspective, would you not think, maybe even a coach's perspective, because there are fewer people doing distance events, there's more of a chance of winning a medal, isn't it? Because everybody wants to sprint, everybody wants to do 50 if you're a freestyler, and the amount of people that would do 100 breast, for example. Then you look at the entry levels for the 1500 and 800, both men's and women's. It's much smaller at big events.
Oh, absolutely, and that goes back to what I said right at the beginning. The opportunities in distance events are there. We're obviously very successful in Great Britain in the relays, and we want to keep that going. But the actual opportunity for a swimmer, where a number of years ago that might have been the correct way of thinking, my best opportunity to get to Olympics or Worlds and into a final and maybe into a medal, there's 5-6 swimmers making up a relay squad. Those relay squads are so hard to get into now that the opportunity is incredibly difficult there. Where in distance swimming, we've got the opportunity just in terms of numbers of possible places, but also the fields are generally much smaller. So you're absolutely right, Bob.
You mentioned relays there, Kevin. I mean, do you think that's a kind of an unintended consequence of a focus is maybe not the right word, but a better relay strategy? Then we've had a lot of success in relays, and that makes them more attractive?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it is an unintended one. We've focused in that area. It is a priority area for us. We've become very, very good at it. But the fact is that the opportunities there are quite small. I think it was for Rio, wasn't it, that there was a new set of rules came in that you had to swim an individual event in order to be able to swim a relay. So we can't take 6 or 7 swimmers. It's probably going to be 5. It could be 6, but they're going to have to be exceptional to take 6. So yes, it's an unintended consequence. And I can understand it. I can understand anyone wishing to be involved in that. But I guess the fact is, if you haven't got the genetics to do that, if you are not incredibly fast and have the genetics to be incredibly fast, you're not going to get in those relay squads.
And I guess the other kind of question would be whether this is just a cycle, a cyclical thing that 20 years ago Britain couldn't find 100 freestyler for love nor money, at world level, and now we've got a massive pot of them, but we've got fewer distance swimmers. So is it that part of it as well? It's just
I think
long-term implications of changes and what have you.
Yeah, I think it is, Steve. I think when I look around the country right now, there are some talents in distance swimming, but we've got to bring them through. It's an event gap for us, but it isn't a talent gap. There is some talent out there that they're probably not going to be ready for Paris, but we've got some younger females who are very exciting. We've got some 17, 18-year-old males that are depending on where they step into next when they finish within school and within their club programs. As long as they make the right choices, we've got a lot of potential in some of those swimmers as well. So there's not a talent gap. We've currently got an event gap, but yeah, I think it's a bit, as you say, Steve, cyclical rather than that there isn't anyone there. And we've had that with many events actually. I think prior to Molly Renshaw coming along, female breaststroke had hit a brick wall for quite a period of time. And I'm a massive believer that it only takes one. It only takes one person to show the way. And because I've already mentioned Molly there, we are stuck up in the 227 area. But when Molly came down to 222, 223, quickly followed by Chloe Tutton, quickly followed by Jocelyn Juliet, quickly followed by Abby Wood. And I think that happens too often to be just a random thing. I think someone shows the way and people buy into that and people get inspired by that someone showing the way.
Is there any reason, Kev, why we can't have depth in loads of events? We're talking about the events where we're strong, 200 free being a great example with the men. Obviously, we got gold and silver in Tokyo and that. But then it seems as we put loads of backing in or lots of infrastructure into certain events, other ones drop off. Is there any reason why we can't keep spinning plates and keep it all going?
Yeah, I think there is a reason for that we can't do that. We're not dealing with the numbers of athletes that are USA or Australia or China. We, like most other countries like France, the Netherlands, Sweden, we've got to be just a little more targeted with the events. That doesn't mean that we ever ignore anything, but we've got to be focused in where we can do really well. As part of what my role is on this as distance lead, I work a lot with Swim England and help them set up some initiatives around distance swimming. But they are looking at that kind of thing around all sorts of events, not just in distance swimming. So we're always looking at where are the event gaps likely to be. Like I say, in distance swimming, we know there's not a talent gap, but there is an event gap. We've got other event gaps, and we're Swim England and I do get involved in this, but we are always looking at where they are. How do we fill those gaps and ensure that they're not going to be a long-term gap.
And I look around the country and I go, right, so who is taking up the baton with us? Who's pushing things forward? Look at Kev Brooks, for example, at Wickham. Look at the amount of 1,500 swimmers he's got, 800 swimmers he's got. Obviously, there's some coming through in Leeds. Is there a question, or is there a case to be made for having a regional long-distance camp? Taking it away from Loughborough, just saying, right, you have it at Wickham, Kev, or you have it in Leeds or whatever, and just have a regional centre that concentrates on long-distance swimming.
Development of distance swimming is, you're talking about school-age kids, so I think that's a nice thing to have on a wish list, but I think the practicalities of that would be very, very difficult in terms of developing them. I think there's pockets of people around the country. Yes, Kev's doing a really good job. The guys in Sheffield are doing a good job and have got some talent there. But like so much of our history, Bob, we've got people that are in smallish clubs or one-offs that are talented. There's a very good young man in Liverpool. There's a very good young lad in Stockport. There's a very good lad in...
That's what I'm saying. If you brought them all together, if you said to Kev Brooks or you said to Mike at Sheffield, right, okay, you are going to be our centre for a long-distance swim. We're going to bring all these people under one umbrella, under one roof, and you're going to look after them. Wouldn't that be a more cohesive way of doing it?
Well, possibly yes, but like I say, I think the practicalities of that, of duty of care around looking after under 18s and moving them around the country is just is an incredibly difficult thing to address, and it's not something that I think we are right now wanting to go to. The way that we've done this is we've set some initiatives up around distance swimming. We've got a group. First thing I did was to put a group of coaches together that we call a distance think tank. We meet every month and discuss distance swimming. There's 10 coaches on that, including some of those guys that we've just talked about. There is a couple of sports science on it. The national head coach Bill Furness sits on it, but it's I facilitate that meeting. That happens every month. We're running distance camps. We've got one starting in Loughborough on the 29th, which is junior to senior. So the youngest swimmer in there is going to be a 13-year-old, and we're going all the way up with Toby Robinson in there. So it's bringing the best that we have together on reasonably, because we did one in October, so reasonably frequent amount of times during the course of the year, and then looking at, okay, how can we enhance some people's opportunities? So allowing, if people want to go up to Andy Manley's groups in altitude at the minute, but if we think that a good opportunity for someone and will enhance their development for a swimmer, go up to altitude with Andy, then we'll look at how we can make that happen. So it sounds like it's a mixed approach between, supporting the swimmers, identifying them, selling the dream that we talked about, and then but upskilling the coaches that are working with them. Yeah, absolutely. And then I probably talk to there's a bunch of 10 or 12 coaches who I talk to virtually every week that are sending me emails with what they're doing every week, that are sending me WhatsApp messages. What do you think of this? Etc. So there's a really good dialogue and feedback loop between a number of distance coaches and myself. And then, as we know, we discussed before we actually started recording. I'm part-time, but Nathan Hilton from Nova Centurion has just come on board with British Swimming to kind of work alongside me. Nathan's got really good experience of developing swimmers. He developed Alice Deering. He helped develop Toby Robinson. He's developed Freya Colbert. So somebody else again who's got a lot of experience and who can help with that individual approach with wherever we find the talent.
How much do you look at the Italian model, and could we adopt it here?
The Italian model, there's a real love of distance swimming out there from large numbers of people. Their model is different to many countries around the world. Their training model is different as well. I mean, obviously, I was out at the European Championships in August. It's a dedicated facility for distance swimming. Sits right on the beach. They swim in the sea a couple of times a week. They're within the confines of the pool facility. They've got 4 or 5 different ribs that they can take out, boats that they take out onto the sea with them. So there's a fantastic model there. It's outdoor. It's an outdoor pool as well, with an indoor one right next to it as well. You're talking of a facility that we don't have, in a location that we don't have, in weather that we don't have. There's probably too many things to overcome. But for them,
couldn't do it in Grimsby.
Couldn't do it in Grimsby. Yeah, let's get it in the North Sea. Oof.
Oh, yeah, I think he's meant to be selling the dream, Bob.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
But you've outlined some of the things that you're doing and know how this is coming together. You mentioned earlier you thought a couple of the young up and comers, if you like, might be a bit too early or Paris might be a bit too early for them. What sort of time frame do you think this kind of initiative works on? I mean, is LA the target really?
Absolutely, LA is the target, but we also do know that you can come through very, very quickly. Paris is 18 months away, and probably is going to get there too soon. But when I say about fast trajectories, 2 years ago, probably nobody had Dan Whiffen, and I know I'm talking about a different nationality, but nobody had him on anyone's radar as being a potential future world star. And here we are, a month after him becoming number 1 in the world in the short course version. And yes, it's a decent leap to go from short to long, but he's a big talent. 18 months out from the 2012 Olympics, nobody had Katie Ledecky down. Katie Grimes in the US appeared out of nowhere for the Olympics in Tokyo. So we know the trajectories can be really, really, really fast and really quick. In fact, I think 2 years out from the Olympics, way back with David in 2004, I think he swam 15:21 at the Commonwealth Games or something like that. And it's quite good, but where he got to in 2 years of 14:45.9, it was
So what are your expectations of Hector and Toby? Obviously, our 2 high-profile open water swimmers right now.
We've got to shake that up. I mean, we're open water's in a place where I guess we've had the very, very best pool swimmers that have come into open water, and they've shifted they've changed the paradigm. They've changed the paradigm back actually to what we, I guess, were doing way back in 2008 with Karianne and Cassie and David. But it's kind of been en masse that the best male swimmers in the pool have all come into open water. And although Bobby Fink hasn't dipped his toe in the water yet, he actually came from a background of being a good junior open water swimmer, so I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in. So we've got to shake that up a bit, and we are. That is something I've from the day I came into this role been talking to Toby, Hector, their coach Andy, and that we've got to get better as 1500 swimmers. We've got to get better swimmers. They've got to become better swimmers. It's not enough to just be tactically good around the open water circuit now. You've got to be a really fast, really good swimmer. and that's what we're focused on right now.
Yeah, now we've been talking about the future. Let's kind of flip round and look backwards a bit. You mentioned David there, and you mentioned 2004. Obviously, that 14:45 is still the British record, 18 and a half years later. And then on the women's side, obviously Becky Adlington set what is the British record, but was a world record at the time in Beijing. I guess Becky's was a world record, so it was an exceptional swim, and she had a suit, so maybe that one might have been expected to last, a little bit. But are you surprised maybe that David's record has lasted so long?
Not really. I think David's record at 14:45, he virtually repeated it in 2008. Dan has nearly got there. He's been within half a second of it. And has Dan had the ability to do it? Got the ability to do it? Yeah, he has. It just hasn't worked out that way. He's been very, very close. Am I surprised? I think we had a little golden patch, as I've said, of 20 years where we were often winning medals. But for very large number of countries, if you win an Olympic event in an event where you don't really have that much tradition in it, and in 2004 we didn't. We had Graham, who had been good before that, and prior to that we hadn't won a medal in men's 1500s for, well, since before my lifetime, I think. So when you get somebody that really jumps out the pack like that, in most countries they don't follow that up. Unless you are a United States, they just have a production line. If you look at the women's event in particular, I think they've, I know this stat, 5-8, out of the last 11 Olympic Games in the 800 freestyle, the US women have won it 8 times. There's virtually no other country manages to do that. When you look at other countries, say like in the women's 800, and you got Lotte Friis wins a medal for Denmark, then exactly the same thing as what's happened with us. There's nothing else kind of following that up. Lauren Boyle in New Zealand, they are, we are trying to ensure we've got a production line, but it is not straightforward. It's never straightforward.
In the context of David, obviously you know him well because you coached him to Beijing and beyond. What were the attributes that made him such a good 1500 swimmer? Or even open water swimmer, 10K. That you would look for in other swimmers.
Well, his genetics. He was a very. He didn't produce lactate. He had a huge aerobic base. He sat really high in the water, so floated over the water really well. He had a stroke rate that really suited the way he swam. So he didn't have a classic Ian Thorpe, Grant Hackett type freestyle, but the stroke rate he swam at kind of matched in with his technique, and the position he sat in the water were really good. He was a relentless character as well in the training pool, and that is so important for the distance swimmers as well. He was a relentless character, and you've got to embrace what you're going to do as a distance swimmer. You are going to spend more time in the pool than the sprinters. You're not necessarily working any harder. You're working differently, but you're going to spend a bit more time in the pool than them. And David was one of these people that totally accepted that, and more than just accepted it, he looked forward to it and he embraced it. And so that's kind of the thing that made him, I think.
He was a freak of nature, I think, Kev. I watched him do his training session with Dave Haller down in Cardiff, and I could not believe what he was doing. You take for granted that swimmers do that day in, day out. And I said to him afterwards, I don't know how you do this 5-6 days a week. Just up and down, then take a swig of water and back in there again. I'm thinking, and the end goal is what? Yes, if you're lucky, you might get an Olympic medal. There's not a great deal of riches attached to this. You might get a sponsored car or something like that. And I said to him, what you have to put in terms of mileage, in terms of meterage every week, just to be in an Olympic final, I find astonishing. And I think it's difficult for anybody else to comprehend the mindset that gets you into that position in the first place.
Well, absolutely, and it's one of the first questions I posed to the distance think tank group back in April was, what comes first? Do you have that mindset, therefore you become a distance swimmer, or you're a distance swimmer that develop that mindset? And the answer is it's probably both. Some people will do it one way, and another bunch of people will do it the other. But there is, and I think so many things in sport are being the best you can be, and coupled with your genetics. To be the best you can be as a sprinter, you will do anything and everything it takes to be the best you can be. Being in a distance swimmer, you'll do anything and everything it takes. And if that means what you observed in David, and I'm sure that wasn't the only time you would have observed that, then that's what you do. It's something that's inbuilt. It's some intrinsic motivation that you have in yourself. I want to be the best I can be. This is what's naturally right for me. That's what I'm chasing after.
Is there anything that you can do, or British Swimming can do, to take Dan Jervis to that next stage? Because he is a world-class athlete. He gets finals time after time. But he's just that tiny bit off getting a medal situation or a podium finish. What can you do? What can you collectively do to get him there?
It's not an easy one, Bob, because like you say, he's just bubbled under so many times. But one of the things that's become harder for him is that you've got four people that have just took a quantum leap away from where the rest of the world are. When the fourth fastest swimmer in the world now is 14:36 in the 1500, we've not seen that before. I don't think. I really we're in a golden era now with the distance swimmers, with Paltrinieri, Wellbrook, Romanchuk, and Bobby Fink. They're stellar performers that have took, and you can only think that that's going to jump again, because one of them guys, none of those guys wants to be the one that doesn't win a medal. And so you could say that taking another leap again, and that's going to be extremely difficult for Dan. But he's a dedicated young man. Him and his coach Adam will be trying everything they can.
Could you convert into open water? Would you want to convert into open water?
They're conversations that I have with his coach, and then his coach have with him. But you've got to if you're going to go, there's no dipping your toe into open water. You go for it. You get involved and you go for it. But it, like, we also know, like, the events generally for the Worlds and the Olympics, the locations, the venues are generally big swimming pools. They're not the disaster that it was at the European Championships year, where you put them in the sea and they just everything gets cancelled and postponed and whatever because the elements are so bad. The Olympics and the World Championships are in big swimming pools. So for me, again, that's this whole thing about what I'm trying to promote and want to promote is it's another distance swimming event. There are, yes, of course, there's some tactics to it, but for me, and there'll always be outliers, and people can always say, but look at this swimmer, or but look at that. But the majority of the people that are doing well in both male and female open water are very fast swimmers in the pool. So those four guys, three of them are dominating open water now, of Romanchuk, Wellbrook, Paltrinieri. Asarenza is a European Championship medal winner and a 14:48 best time in the 1500. On the women's side, Sharon's won 3 world medals in the pool, hasn't she? in her career. They're very, very fast. I think the kind of maybe older model of an old motor summer, that gives you an opportunity to get in the top 10, but if you want to be in the medals, you need to be a great swimmer.
Kevin, I think that's a good time to draw a line under things. It's been fascinating hearing your views on how we improve things in Great Britain. So we wish you every luck turning the tanker around, as it were, and say thank you very much for joining us.
Well, hopefully it won't be like the Titanic, and we and can't avoid the iceberg. We'll try and get it turned around quickly. Thanks for having me on, guys. Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Huge thanks to Kevin for sharing his distance expertise. Really interesting overview of the work he's doing here in the UK to try and get things back to where they used to be. That's all for this episode, but one final reminder, don't forget to check out the Pullbuoy store for our collection of t-shirts and jumpers and bits and bobs. You can find that at pullbuoy.co.uk/store. If you want to get in touch at all, you can get me on @Pullbuoy on Twitter, @PullbuoyUK on Instagram, or you can go to www.pullbuoy.co.uk/contact if you want to send an email. Until the next episode, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Pullbuoy podcast. For more episodes, visit www.pullbuoy.co.uk/podcast.